with the elections just around the corner, I was wondering what the various candidates standing in the Wairarapa are thinking. Time to put some questions to them. What actions will you be taking to limit crime?
And for decades, governments have sent people to prison without adequate rehabilitation and training. And they just re-offend because they've learned nothing new, they've made more gang connections. You've got to address the causes, not just the symptoms of crime. More Greens in government will address justice, income support and rehabilitation.
When you say the causes of crime, I don't quite understand that.
Well, the causes of crime vary from person to person and crime to crime, but to some extent, lack of a caring home, lack of education, no diagnosis of mental illness, no rehabilitation of drug and alcohol addictions. Those are the clear things that lead to more crime. Let's not forget white-collar crime in terms of tax evasion, scams and outright fraud. That costs this country a lot, and we do need to invest in cyber security, people understanding how to keep themselves safe on the internet and making sure that we don't get scammed from overseas as well. So there's a lot of work to be done in crime and justice.
What will you do about the lack of medical professionals in the area?
We will fund more places and more treatment. For example, in our free dental care plan, obviously free dental care needs more dentists. Previous governments have capped that at 60 places a year. From next year, if the Greens have their say, we will have another 20 places a year.
If you're providing more money, how do we get the extra staff in? Because it takes time to train.
It does, and we have a plan that is a progressive plan which increases access, first of all for checkups and then moving forward into fillings and then more serious dental care. The other thing is if you treat things earlier, then they're cheaper, there's less pain and it's easier to manage. So getting in prevention and also early treatment saves money in the long run. We will continue to support overseas health staff, but they're a very high percentage of the New Zealand medical staff and we need to train our own.
What is your attitude towards co-governance and democracy?
I think we should be just as proud of having Te Tiriti o Waitangi, which is between the Indigenous people and everyone who came later, as we are of being the first country in the world to have women voting. It hasn't been honoured. There has been widespread land theft, colonisation of ideas, and people have not been free to go and fish or gather kai. So I think we've got a long way to go before those wrongs are redressed. If you look at the total amount of Te Tiriti payments through the Waitangi Tribunal, some people say that's about 1% of the value of the land that was taken. Co-governance is a way of sharing responsibility and it's a way of learning from each other. Let's look at it as an opportunity to build a modern country that has got input from the first people that were here and later settlers.
What policies are you planning to address climate change?
Well, the Greens will take bold action on climate pollution. We've already done more in the last 6 years than the previous 30 years of government on climate action. If you think about the Zero Carbon Act and also putting money aside from polluters to help other people change their habits when it suits. And the most recent example of that is the clean energy payment that we've promoted. And that means that you can get a grant of $6,000 or an interest-free loan of up to $30,000 to actually put all sorts of useful things in your house, whether it's better ventilation so it's not mouldy, whether it's solar panels and batteries, or replacing gas appliances with electric appliances. If we replaced all the domestic gas appliances, that would be like taking 200,000 cars off the road, and it would make most people's houses drier and safer as well.
The other aspect that I think we have to address with climate change and the fact that we live in the Wairarapa is the huge farming community here, and the farming community may be afraid of having more Greens in power, and how it will affect their kind of business practices?
Well, people who farm really want the clean rivers and the good atmosphere and the healthy climate that everybody else does. You know, this isn't necessarily a divide between rural and city folk. There are many farmers who are already planting in wetlands, reducing their fertiliser use, and are very aware of the number of emissions or the amount of emissions from their farms. They've done a good job in many cases in finding that out. I think they're seeing with the commodity prices at the moment that there need to be better ways of earning money than just more and more numbers of, whether it's dairy cattle or whether it's more sheep and beef. If we aim for the top end of the market for the export, then they will be expected to declare how they're dealing with emissions anyway, and run off into the streams and so on. And as I say, there are many farmers now setting a good example. We don't want them undermined by the ones who are a little bit slower to act.
What are your transport plans for the Wairarapa?
Well, the Greens want more passenger trains, more freight on rail, and also coastal shipping, because that will reduce the wear and tear on our roads and reduce emissions. The larger vehicles have had a huge impact on our roads, and if we had more freight travelling on trains, that would address the causes behind potholes. I'm also pretty keen on town students being able to walk and cycle to school. It's great for their independence, their health, and it's one more time that the parent doesn't have to be a taxi.
Will you instruct the NZTA to go back to the 100km/h Freddeston to Masterton route?
Well, I think there are parts of the route that are definitely better a little bit slower. But I think the most important safety thing is to have a look at the Remataka Hill. It seems quite weird that you go out of Featherston to the south and you're straight into 100k when it's, you know, winding round corners and bends and narrow bridges and so on. So that would be my priority. And I think there's a number of gravel roads that are really not designed to be driven at 100km/h.
How do you plan to deal with financial inequality within society?
It's a matter of political decision as to how wealth is spread in this country, and the Greens' guaranteed minimum income of at least $385 a week will make a real difference to people, make a difference to students, it will make a difference to parents, it'll make a considerable difference if you're working, or if for some reason you're not able to work at the moment. We don't think it's fair that children who are the children of nurses, early childhood carers, cleaners, farm workers should have less of a good start in life than the children of bankers and company owners. The minimum income guarantee includes a tax-free threshold of $10,000, which we believe is absolutely affordable, but it does rely on a wealth tax. It's just not fair that 311 families who are the wealthiest in the country should be paying less than 10% of their income in tax, whereas somebody on just above the minimum income pays 20% or more.
Some of your critics might say that you're basically providing finance to people who don't deserve it and they should be working for it.
Many of the poorest families in New Zealand are working families, or they're studying so that they're going to be able to get better jobs, or they're on health and disability issues. Are we really going to expect people who have got life-limiting illnesses to be able to go out and own a bank? And also the children, it's not the children who are deserving or not deserving. Every child deserves to have food on the table, some books in the home, and decent shoes and an overcoat so that they can walk to school. I think this country should be built on equality and a fair tax system.
What will you do to stop bullying in schools?
The Green Party will adequately resource schools and teachers, so there's a better teacher-student ratio. We also think that mental health support in every school, so that when children feel they're being bullied, they've got someone to go to, will help. And the Greens, because we include people, rainbow people, people with disabilities, people of different ethnicities, people of different ages, we want to model that there is a place for everybody in our community. So it's not just bullying in schools, it's bullying across the whole of society. More Greens in Parliament will be able to make sure that there is less discrimination, both in legal terms, but also day to day.